call ourselves to order with the roll call.
Chair Loman,
Here.
Vice Chair Foster. Here. Rich Miller.
Here.
Bob Silverford.
Here.
Megan Thornton. Here. Chris West.
Present.
And Lori Smoothly.
Here.
Very good, thank you.
Okay. First thing on our list is approval of the minutes. Bob, did you have a chance to?
I did. Well, as usual, I did have a chance to look at the minutes. You know, you got a pretty, maybe terrible life if you have time to do. Anyway, being retired, I did have time to read this. Doesn't take very long. And given the fact that the meeting was in May, my memory is still good enough to remember 2 months away.
I'm impressed.
So I didn't see anything wrong. It looks great. So I move that they be approved as submitted.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We have it. Can you sign this now, Angie?
Yes.
Thank you. Board member announcements. Let's start with Bob and come around the table.
Okay, I want to talk first about the Charter Review Committee. We had a work session, it was changed a time or two, and I believe it was June 4th. And we actually had a meeting with the members of the City Council and went over all the recommendations that the committee had come up with. Everybody was supplied with a copy of all the changes and so forth, and there were a lot of questions. And the next meeting of the committee, according to Jai Soper, is on, let's see, August 29th, to approve the minutes of that last meeting that the committee had, and to fortunately disband the committee. We've been going on for a long time. And so that will disband the committee and the work will be done and sent up to the City Council to decide how they want to handle this. They have the recommendations.
So don't they decide what to put forward onto the ballot? Isn't that the way it works?
That's correct.
We did that. We had another work session.
Yeah. And when would that, what ballot would that be in? Oh, Kim, do you know?
November.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do have a question. What is the city's policy on people parking cars on the street weekend after weekend with a for sale sign in the window? Is that okay? Is it, do you need a permit to do that? Can anybody do that?
The 5-day rule?
No. I mean, that always applies, but for some reason, I want to say that there's no ordinance in Sherwood against that, but I have to double check. So it won't take me long to double check, but I sometimes confuse ordinance from a past job, and so I will report back shortly.
Okay, it appears that there is more and more out by Snyder Park, Sunset.
Oh, yes.
There are cars that are lined up there. Sunday's a popular day for it, and it just gets longer and longer. There aren't a huge number there, but it's not going away. And you know, I think it's not a used car lot. It shouldn't be a used car lot there, and it kind of, I think, I don't know if cheapens is the right word, but for people that are visiting the city, coming through Sherwood, I don't think it gives good luck. Some people, probably those who have a car for sale and like to do it, think it's fine, it's a good luck, but maybe not. That's all I have.
Okay. You close, Chief? Okay. Rich?
I just wanted to say I attended the anti-harassment training last month, and it was really helpful. I kind of left thinking, wow, I wish this was more. There was more. She went through it so fast, and so I just had that comment. I would have been happy if it would have been longer, or 2 weeks in a row or something. So.
Megan? You know, nothing.
I know, for once, I've got nothing.
Okay. Chris?
All right, I have two things. One, on July 4th at 10 p.m., I became a granddad.
Oh, great.
Congratulations.
You know, that's the
July.
same birthday as John Adams and Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah.
Well,
Best job in the world.
Raylan's doing great. I'm getting enough sleep, barely. So, but everybody's doing fine. I wanted to recognize the department for getting the radar trailers back up and running and appreciate the one that was on Sunset. Because just before it went up, because I live in the neighborhood across from Archer, and was coming out at Lad Hill, crossing Sunset onto Main, and was halfway through the intersection and could tell this car was not gonna stop. And it stopped on the other side of the crosswalk, but I had stopped in the intersection because I could just tell. So I appreciate that being up there to slow the traffic down, and I think I'm recognizing more patrols out, just with even though I don't work in town, being out and about, I'm seeing a lot more activity, and I think that's good for Sherwood and good for the department, so that's what I have.
Yeah, about those photo trailers, they've made it to social media, so people are noticing, so that's good. I mean, people post that they're out there, and so that's good, because, you know, those who notice it on social media, then the word gets around, and so, and then I would assume, will you be talking a little bit about the pedestrian bridge grant thing? Great.
Lori?
I also went to that, anti-harassment training, and I just wanna comment that the Police Advisory Board was the most represented board
Yes.
in that meeting.
Mm.
There were 4 of us.
Out of like 8,
Yeah.
Yeah.
one being me.
We made up a large part of that room, so go board.
Well, but I think I know why. Because not our council representative, but our city representative packs a gun, so we were gonna come no matter what, right?
Are you saying we had to be there? National Night Out is coming up on August 6th, so it's a great time, if you don't have anything else going on that night, it's a great time to come on out, see our neighbors, intermingle with the police department,
Walk the neighborhood.
down at Cannery Square. Oh, you already, all right, there you go. Just, she's gonna talk more about that then. That's what I have. Oh, 5 to 9, hold that back up. 5 to 9?
5 to 9.
5 to 9 at Cannery Square.
Free hot
These are
dog.
out front if you'd like one to pass to your friends and neighbors.
Excuse me.
Thank you.
Something, Scotty? Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. Well, I have nothing. So, other than I'm enjoying some of the warm weather, and, but I too have seen the officers out and about, a bit more present. That's always good to see. We are on to business. First item, new municipal code for boards and commissions.
Thank you. I could not, back to your question, I could not get the municipal code to load on mobile, so I made a note. I will send out an email to answer that question. Okay, so I've discussed this briefly before, and there was a great need to make consistent the language for all boards and commissions. And so that has been done in the code. Prior to that, there was certain language for this police advisory board, certain language for other boards. Some boards had no language whatsoever, so they've made that all consistent. And so a lot of the things regarding like term limits and rules and expectations, all that is consistent across the board. So one of the things that they did is they standardized the start time for all terms of boards. Because again, everybody was all over the place. And so the decision was made to make July 1 the beginning of a term year, if you will. Okay, so any term that expires is gonna expire on June 30th. And a new term would begin on July 1 for all boards and commissions. Now, the years are obviously gonna be different, right? But every term is gonna start on July 1. So specific to our board, there was also a desire, because as you know, this is a brand new board, so 9 positions started at the same time, and we've created through normal attrition some staggering of those dates, but not complete. And so that was the other thing, is to make sure that boards and commissions had staggered stop times, so you're not replacing 7 people at once or 9 people, whatever the case may be. Some boards already had that, and it was a non-issue. There's a new board that was created, the Senior Advisory Board, so clearly that's the worst extreme, because it's brand new. They're gonna start like we did several years ago. And then we're kind of not as bad, but almost there. And so we need to stagger the terms on this board. So let me just kind of go through. So everybody's new, everybody now, once the ordinance went into place, or excuse me, ordinance, the code went into place, everybody on this board, your expiration term previously was March 31st, according to the records we had. Regardless, doesn't matter if those are right or wrong. Now, everybody's expiration date is June 30th. And the expiration year is 2021. So everybody's on the same term, so we need to have, yeah, that doesn't make sense. But anyway, we'll sort through it. So when did you and Ralph come on?
Amy Miller went off and I came on April of last year, so April 2018.
It's my second year.
So I'm like 1 year and 3 months in.
Which would be 21.
The 3-year
Yeah.
terms.
3-year term, so 2021.
Yeah, 21, right.
So you just hooked me for
so-
3 more months, gotcha.
Yeah, so, which is what happens. And some of you are in your second terms. Is everybody else in their second term? I was thinking you were on your,
It's my first.
yeah, okay.
There are
So the
5
rest
of
of us are old
Right.
timers.
So what's gonna happen is the way the language is in the code is nobody was gonna get penalized, right? So they didn't wanna like shorten anybody's term forcefully, like just say,
We don't want to shorten any of the term.
Right.
We did that last meeting.
So some people, well, their term would expire at the right time. Other people, they would get an extra year based on the new, to other people, right? So this is, as I'm going through this, understand that this is a confusing process that staff has gone through to do this. But we now have, our staggered terms are, we have 3 terms that'll end in 22, 3 terms that'll end in 23, and then 3 terms that'll end in 24.
Wait, you're getting way.
What?
Now,
We just-
no, wait a minute.
Do we pick numbers?
You're gonna draw a line.
So that's based on the new expiration of June 30, 21. Except for the 2 vacant positions, their new expiration is gonna be June 30 of 22 because they'll come on in 2019. Right, they'll come on this year, a little bit late after July 1, but they'll still come on this year. So their term will be June 30, 22, their expiration, along with one other person that's here, if somebody chooses. And then the rest of them are staggered. So they've left it up to the board to kind of figure out how this is gonna work, right?
I'm so confused. Do any terms end before 2022 now?
No,
So we're
So
all,
you just hooked us another year?
or more.
Yeah, it should.
no. Yes, I'm sorry. There are 7 terms that end in 21.
That's all of us.
All of us
Right.
end in
Yeah.
21
So we need
unless
to basically
re-up.
draw lots for people to go off next
Well,
year.
so here's the deal, if somebody wants to come off sooner than that, they can, right? I mean, depending on how many years you've served. But everybody's at 21, and then the next terms then will be 3 years from that, and some of those terms will only be, one of those will be a 1-year term, 2 of them will be 2-year terms, or 3 of them, excuse me, and then 3 of them will be a full 3-year
So
term.
we're not gonna stagger them until after the
Yeah,
2021.
right, yeah.
Ah.
Thank
We
you.
all have the option to still go off. We could
I
still,
told you this is confusing.
you could still have a completely new board come 2021, unless you
Okay,
stay.
got it.
But that's.
So right now, according to the work that was done and presented to me, everybody's new term expiration date is June 30 of 2021. Everybody that's here today.
We all got extended.
Okay, so yeah, so you got extended.
If you so choose.
Now, the language in the code, I'll double check, but it still says 2 terms, right? You can do
Right.
3 years and then re-up.
Yeah.
So those of you that are on your second term, you're finishing up, right, you can't re-up. So, and if my memory serves me right, we have 5 of you, right? I think somebody got
Right.
5 of you that are there. So it's kind of, you can go through to 21 and take that little bit extra time, but certainly you always have the potential to say, I've had enough, and then that just adds to the staggering, frankly. I mean, it wouldn't be, so,
Do you have to take a 1-year break before you can start another?
gosh,
I'm getting it.
Well, or does it depend on sort of the vacancies
you
that
could
are
go to
available?
you could go to a different board.
Right away, but serving on that board,
The same board, I think there has to be a
1-year break.
1-year break, if that got left in there or not.
that's usually the.
Yeah, so anyway, again, I apologize for the confusion, I have been trying to sort through this, and it's, so, this is like kind of the final update to let everybody know where the dates are at. And then, as always, it's up to each individual board member to say, okay, well, I was planning on coming off, sometime around the first year of 21. And now they've pushed me into the summer, I really don't wanna do that. When is an opportune time, right? Or, oh, great, I get more time. I mean, it's really up to you. But just to let you know, that's where everybody's at right now.
Well, 5 of the 7
Yes, yes,
can't come back on.
right.
So Megan, we got some work to do.
Chair, vice chair.
I know, I get it.
So much for just being the board member.
Yeah, I don't see it, 2 terms being,
Well, I thought I was looking for it actually in the revised, that was my question, is I saw it in the original, because I had just read it, because we were talking about it, that it did limit the 2 3-year terms, but I didn't see it in the revision.
yeah, I don't see.
So I thought, that was one of my questions.
Like, now we'll let you serve as long as you want.
So Chair, it would be you and me through 2021.
22,
You
We've
just
been
said we
extended.
all end.
been extended, correct,
No,
Chief?
they all, everybody ends
2021.
But we could re-up 7/1/2021 through 6/30/2024. God, that seems like a long way out.
Carry on.
It won't be, but well, I don't have to decide today, right?
Yeah,
So does anybody have any questions? I'm just double checking to make sure. I thought there was a term limit, but maybe they took that out.
I don't see it.
No, it's
Yeah, 'cause
clear
I
as
read it
mud.
originally, but-
Isn't it?
Diagnose
Clear as
things.
mud.
Well, I wanted to make sure you all understood it as well as I did. The term of office shall be for 3 years. Blah, 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 blah.
No discussion on that,
I'd say-
somebody just crossed it
I
off
think
and
the
everybody
original
missed
was
it.
first.
I'll check in with Josh on that for sure, but I mean.
They're like, let's just go ahead and stretch this.
Sneak that
So-
right out of there.
So the point of all
Yeah, we
this
knew it
is
first.
to make sure everybody's up to speed on, the code is done, it's available online if you wanna read it. That's where the expiration dates have been changed to. It was to give people more time, not less time. And so, everybody in the room, June 30th, 21 is when your term expires. Understanding that if you have the opportunity, just like you normally would, to say, well, I'll go a year early or whatever the case may be. We're gonna have 2 new people coming on this year, so.
Do we have
I'm
any?
gonna stop talking about that.
Well, I have one other question in regards to
Yeah, Mark did.
that. When do chair and vice chair rotate?
July of each year.
Okay.
There's a new vote July of each year for that.
That would be now.
So that
But we
changed
just
too.
did that.
Yeah, we just did that. I don't know, I mean, we just did that a few months ago, so it might not hurt for the record to affirm or, but just to say, okay, well, based on the new code, we did it. In fact, that would be my advice, so.
I move that Ralph and Diane are our chair and vice chair from July 1, 2019 through June 30, 2020.
Second.
Bada bing, bada boom. There
Okay,
we go.
we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any conversation, any discussion?
Do you still want them?
Not from us.
It doesn't seem like it's been that long. I don't know,
I
right?
know,
It seems like we just came into these positions, so.
Didn't
yeah,
we
it's
just
fine
come
with
in in
me.
May? Or April?
April,
Yeah.
And we were late.
Mhm.
but this is a.
Can we get a motion and like,
We got a second.
We have a
Yeah,
motion and a
We got
second.
the motion, I've got the.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, very good. For the record, thank you.
probably play this out now.
So, traffic calming, this will, take the bulk of our time. So first of all, we were contacted by 12 Valley Farm Rescue. I think I might have mentioned this at the last meeting, but anyway, they want to be, involved and participate. So at some point, probably our next meeting, I'll start making sure they're aware and they can have a representative here. But I think really they want to be involved in the actual program, traffic code, whatever that looks like, not the process to get it established. So I explained to them where we're at, and they just wanted to make sure that it was on the horizon. So
How were they, just out of curiosity, how did they know about the project?
saw it on Facebook.
That'd be me.
That was good.
332 actual comments plus personal messages. So I learned a new way to use Messenger because I thought you had to know someone to talk to them that way. No, there's a separate one,
Mhm.
but
So let's go over that final data. So I have copies here. It's, if you want a copy. So we got all the information that has come into Angie as of this afternoon. Just pass those
hey,
along.
the deadline was the 5th.
What's that?
The deadline was the 5th, I was told.
Well, it was. So she, I didn't want her to go back and start searching through minutes. So it might be useful to everybody kind of take a second and think about, there was a certain people you weren't sure about. Remind me those were,
Alright, these numbers for residents spoken to, including the media outreach, was 372 from Megan and Bob. So I think we didn't get
yeah, so the others, if you remember roughly how many people you spoke with, that would be not paper surveys, but spoke
Yeah.
with, that would be awesome.
Mine was about 25, and they
Okay.
were all spoken, mine were not
Okay.
paper, because I'm not a paper person.
Anybody else have a number to throw out?
Mine was about 40, but I didn't look at who responded to Megan, so I don't know if there's any duplication.
Doesn't matter. We don't have to be, it's not a scientific,
I don't know how there'd be duplication.
20?
okay?
I did all mine on paper.
Okay.
Angie has mine.
Oh, that's right. Okay, very good. So,
It's Brittany, 25.
No. So, while she's adding those up, traffic safety concerns, so these were the number one big deals, obviously speeding, 41, stop signs, surprisingly came in higher than that, so that's interesting than speeding, because I would have thought speeding was gonna be, number one. Then miscellaneous related to parking and different things not captured anywhere else. So pedestrian safety, and then everything else, pretty insignificant in terms of numbers. So those types of things are clearly the biggest issues, no surprises there. And so you all talked to,
457.
okay, that's a very good number, right? So that's a number that's gonna be significant to council when you report on that. And that'll certainly be a number that you wanna include in your report, so. So that's what the data shows, and that's what you got from the community input, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good sampling, from the citizens. Any questions on any of that?
So 457, I mean, I'm not the math major in the house, but I know that these numbers don't equal 457. So what I'm wondering is, and I found this with trying to do my analysis for you, Angie, is there were so many comments that I didn't even feel fit into these. I didn't know how to make them fit. Like, they would give a problem. Oh, there's a lot of XYZ at Sequoia and Temple Crossing. Okay, great. What are we gonna do about it?
Right.
So I think these are probably the solution-based comments that we received, not necessarily.
Yeah, I think.
And I don't mean negative complaints, like people just Facebook complaining like normal. I mean, here's where the problem is, thank you so much for looking at this, but they don't have a face.
Yeah, and this is because we didn't have a scientific tool, we didn't put together some formal survey or whatever, so I'm not concerned with that at all. I think this is representative of those issues that rose to the surface. Now, we have all the comments that you submitted and other comments, I just didn't include them on this sheet, but they can certainly be reviewed and incorporated in some kind of a report. So, not every one, but, kind of highlights. Okay, anything else on that? All right, so I want to move on to the next session, then I'm gonna wrap all this up with a vote. Other cities' models, the TV's went off.
Oh, that one I didn't turn on. I
Oh,
just turned
is
on
that
that one.
Okay. I don't know if we're gonna see this.
No, the one behind this, if
No.
everybody wouldn't mind turning it around here. Probably a little easier.
So I assigned homework or suggested that you might go online and see what other places are doing. And without knowing if anybody had a chance to do that, I thought I'll just compile a brief sampling for you. So that's really what this is a program. So before I go into that, let me just tell you that we have a sheet. This is a couple years old actually, but it does, and I'll just run through, I suspect these are maybe enough, no, they're not alphabetical order, but here's a list of cities that we got a couple years ago. Beaverton has a commission, Hillsborough has a committee, Tigard has a committee, Tualatin mentions one, but there's nothing there. Wilsonville, nothing. Newburgh has a commission. Gresham has what they call a subcommittee. Salem has a commission. Eugene has a committee. Oregon City has a committee. Lake Oswego has a Transportation Advisory Board. And nothing mentioned on Milwaukee, Woodburn, West Lake. So it's pretty common. These programs are pretty common.
Just quickly, I was looking on Google to find like the best way to find the committees, and I looked on OregonImpact.org, and it took me there as I just searched, Oregon Traffic Safety Committee, and it actually then gives a link by county level and by city level to all those that match like a safety committee. Yeah, which I thought was cool. So it's OregonImpact.org, but then it was Traffic Safety Committee. That was sort of my search. And then when you click on it, it takes you to the city page or the county page. And some of them, I shouldn't say most, some of them you click and you can tell maybe they're not active anymore.
Right.
They once were, but a lot of them still are. So like Newburgh was, and then you can kind of tell even from peeking in there how frequently they meet based on the
Yeah.
minutes and things like that. But I liked that it was sort of a one place
Yeah.
to find a long list.
Yeah, so my goal in this was to pick some of our closer neighbors and just give you a sampling of what their program looks like. There's no reason to reinvent the wheel. You all are gonna wanna build something, the council's gonna wanna build something for Sherwood, but there's no reason to try to recreate. So Beaverton has 6 members. They include reviewing proposals, they're an advisory role to city council, and they deal with neighborhood traffic management. Okay, so these are just highlights.
Do you know if the members are citizens or?
If it said, I
Okay.
put up there, but otherwise it didn't say. Canby's got 7. You see there, they implement programs, advisory to council. They look at projects. They work with the public and acceptance, public knowledge and support, and public education. Hillsborough is 3 city councilors, so they are a subcommittee of council, and basically same types of duties. They serve as the Traffic Safety Commission. Tigard has 11 members, and it didn't really go into detail, but they're an advisory body to the city council. This is all off the website, so should be pretty fresh stuff. Newburgh, I found, actually was one of the most interesting ones. They didn't tell me how many people are on the committee, but they actually have this statement that describes what they do. And they had forms right there on their website, so when you click on it, man, the forms are right there. And they're the same kind of, I didn't look at all the forms, but just by their title, I thought, those are useful forms. Traffic safety complaint, stop sign request, speed management request. I mean, it was just like, wow, these are the kinds of things we deal with. So there you go. Just a brief sampling, as I said, of what others are doing. So, all that is informative, and I think we're at the point now where we spent some time chewing on this and thinking about the elements that you all think the Sherwood program should have. So from A to Z, what's your recommendation on it, what it should be called? Or what do you like in terms of it should, a name? How many people? What kind of representation? What types of duties are they going to perform? How, the whole deal, right? So, knowing that, the whole data gathering now is complete. I think you've done a great job on that. Thank you, Megan, for bolstering the numbers so well, but that's very, very informative, and we have an idea of what the issues are, and the issues really aren't going to come into play here, except that how you build the program, you need to have those issues in the back of your mind when you're thinking about what do we want this group to do, knowing that we have these kinds of issues that are concerning people.
Well, I just did the math, percentages by categories. 24% was speeding, 34% was stop signs, miscellaneous was 24, pedestrians was 13, and then I lumped the rest of them, it was 5%. So when you talked about Newburgh, I was going, well, we gotta have, if we're having individual forms or, speeding, stop sign, traffic lights, pedestrians, and then maybe a miscellaneous catch-all. And maybe we can define that over time better as we get stuff in.
Right.
But that, just on what our collection was, that's what I saw.
Right. Which is good, and I think that, like I said, that's gonna help guide the duties and responsibilities of the group, right? So for example, what I mean by that is you should put the group together and you're thinking about, okay, what are we gonna, these are all recommendations, right? You're gonna take this to council. I talked to Joe tonight. He envisions a work session where you present this, And then it'll be, you know, probably be some kind of resolution, I would assume, I don't think it takes an ordinance. A resolution to establish this and get it going. But if, as you're thinking about what the group's gonna do, you say, well, do we want them to make recommendations on engineering things? Do we want them to be considering, you know, engineering types of deals? Well, maybe not, because you only had one person that listed that, right? So that may not be something that you want that group to do. That may be something you're just gonna say, hey, look, engineering issues are gonna go right to staff. We have a city engineer, we have a whole crew to work on that, and that's not something that everybody's screaming for. But complaints about speeding, and it's never a one-off complaint, right? You know, because you talk to people, it's never, there's this red car that always, okay, that's an easy thing for us to solve. No, it's there's hundreds of people using this as a drive-through, thoroughfare, you know, over in, kind of behind where Ralph's at, and they're all speeding, and they're all, okay, well, that's an issue we need to look at. And if you remember some of our previous conversations, we're gonna pull data for the group to consider, and they're gonna have a list of menu items, what do we think is the best way to address this, and blah, 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 right? So that's what you think about as you're building this program, so.
Chief, I have a question, a clarification question. Do you envision this being a responsibility that's gonna come under the heading of this board? Is it gonna be a separate commission? Or is it gonna be a new board?
That's what you're gonna decide.
What is your preference?
No, I will give you advice, like if you say, well, what would be the challenges if we created a new board? Be glad to tell you what those challenges are, but I want, and council wants to know what you all think, right? Because part of what you talked to people about was their thoughts about a traffic calming program. Their thoughts about being involved in a traffic calming program, right? There were the vast majority of people, but there were several that said, yeah, there were several that said absolutely, depending on or whatever. So that should play into, okay, is it just gonna be, are we gonna copy Hillsborough and say, you know, council, we think you all should just manage this? Or are we gonna create a citizen, right? That, all that data you got plays into that. And as you come up with ideas, ask me what pitfalls are, what challenges are. I'll just give you a wild scenario. If you said, well, you know, we talked to a lot of people, so we think we ought to put together a 30-person, you know, crew that needs to. I'd say, my input to you would be that's going to be really hard to manage, right? So I mean, I'm going kind of crazy, but I don't have a preference.
Well, you don't want to share your preference.
It's not my role
Right.
to dictate how this should
Okay.
look.
Okay, that's fair. Just based on the data that you, or the examples you showed us, it sounds like it's probably a whole nother responsibility that's beyond this board.
As in report to city council, don't report to us.
As in, yes, either as a commission or as a board. I mean, I think we can do the initial work in sort of putting the bones together. But as far as us being the ones that manage it, it's just beyond, I think it's beyond what our original calling or charter was.
See, and I'm gonna come at it differently, Rich, because when we've tackled a lot of things in our 5 years, is that right? 4.5. But the number one issue that we as an advisory board keep hearing when we've reached out to the public is traffic related stuff. So to me, they pretty much told us that the police advisory, this is our biggest concern. So, so in that, I think that, and I saw numbers up there from 5 to 7 to 3 to everything. And what I was thinking is that 2 of the members should be from this group because of our experience. This is my recommendation. I think somebody from the PD should be there. somebody now from Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue wants to be part. And I guess, Chief, don't we still want to have somebody from engineering or public works? Wouldn't we? Because if we're talking about putting a new stop sign in or something like that, I guess, that's why I see 3 entities from departments, even though fire and rescue is a separate entity, but not under the city.
So staff cannot be a part of a board or commission. Staff will be, you will have staff liaison that will, as assigned, as needed, that will, just like we do now,
Okay.
that will come, present, that will support, whatever the case may be. As the group is set up, however the group is set up, that will happen. So that needs to be part of your recommendation is, we believe, for example, we believe instead of like a traditional staff member, we believe this group, whatever you're gonna recommend it be called, should have a staff liaison that attends every meeting from the police department, if I'm just gonna use your example, from Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue and from the engineering department, right? So, and then we make that happen. Obviously, as you point out, we can't control TDFR, but they would have a seat in every meeting as a staff position.
Some of the agendas from these other cities look as though they appear to have a spot where the police discusses, a spot where engineering discusses. I haven't seen the TVF in ours, but I think that's a really good idea. But it does look like a lot of the agendas do have definitely feedback from police, engineering, and then they have a lot of citizen comments, unlike our board. And a lot of them look like they start off with citizen comments in the beginning, and it looks like a lot of people have a lot of things to say, just when you look at their minutes.
What I was thinking would be, I mean, just my perspective, but we'd have our police advisory board where we are now, and then we would have the, traffic calming committee under us. I don't know how that looks officially, city-wise or whatever. We'd have a liaison from our board, and then whatever staff positions. But I was thinking we needed 5 to 7 citizens. Like, I thought it was supposed to be a citizen board, but I don't want a board of 15. So now I'm thinking, if we had 3 staff liaisons, would we then have 3 citizen liaisons?
Don't count staff.
They don't
That
count.
that was my point. Staff,
Oh,
they
so it'd
are
be like
not
a
members
committee
of
of
the
5
board.
to 7 plus
Yeah.
staff.
Yeah, staff
Okay.
is always gonna be there, however you determine, but
Okay.
they're not to be counted as a member of the board.
So I think odd numbers are good,
Yep.
and I think 5 or 7 is good, because if you give more than that, you're gonna have all damn day meetings, and that's just not acceptable. A lot of the people that, talk to me on Facebook were talking about, well, depending on what day of the week, probably once or twice a month, which I was thinking, holy cow, we talked about like once a quarter. So I was
Looks like Newburgh,
shocked at that.
it looks like Newburgh does quarterly.
I think that makes
Well,
complete more
because
sense.
it also looks like in like their minutes, I mean, they're gathering information and trying to address things before they have another meeting. So it's not just like data collection, because, really for a commission like that or a board like that, you have to have time to at least come up with some solutions
Yeah.
So,
before you're getting behind maybe on some of your feedback.
If we have a member of this group on that group, then that's the reporting back to us, it will
Right.
back up to us.
so
That's what I was
here's
thinking.
my challenge to that though, is every one of us are busy people. I mean, we have 2 retired people and the rest of us work, and we have families that require a lot of our attention. And to me, having a board member be a liaison, or 2 board members being a liaison, is asking way too much of a volunteer person. I do think that first I want to affirm what Chris said, that I do believe that we have to respond to the real concern that our community has about speeding and running red lights. So we respond by creating another, or suggesting that we create another board or commission. And I personally don't have a problem with, in the initial stages, having the liaison help build it. But I really don't envision that any one of us would want to go to a second board meeting to deal with a bunch of data. Secondly, if in fact, and Chief responded to the fact that the forums on the Newburgh site are very helpful. that's gonna be the primary way that people would have input to this new commission or board. And so the only way to be effective in responding to that is the board has to deal with those. And we have no idea how many. But I would guess if you put the word out that you can go to this website, you can start putting in these forms and it will be responded to, you're gonna start dealing with dozens of those every single month. There's no way that this board, with what we're doing, can, and then the members on this board, the 2 or 3 liaison, can handle that. So I don't think it's inappropriate for us to be involved in the structural design of it, but honestly, I think it's a completely separate board.
So.
And they could just come report to us.
Or the city council person could.
It appears as though that is the way that most other cities handle it. Like if you go to their website, it is a separate, all of their boards and commissions are listed and it is one of them. If you go to each city's drop down. And then, but most of them do have council representation.
Excuse me for interrupting, but I've been listening to everybody and I have something to say. I kind of disagree with everything that's been said so far. I think that we are an excellent data gathering group. We've done it several times. We're thorough. We come up with good results, and that's the role that we play. I don't think that we should have anything at all, except maybe to attend a meeting if we want to, for a commission or board or whatever you want to call it. I think that it should be comprised, say, of 6 people, and it should be, Kim Young, you listening?
I am.
It should be 3 from city council, whether you really rise or not, and say not
I
another,
enroll mine.
not
I
another
think we're on
board
the
to be
same
on.
page.
But I think it ought to be 3 from city council, and it should be 3 citizens. I talked to some people that seemed very knowledgeable about this. They had great ideas. Several of them said, yes, I would certainly welcome being on a board or commission. And let that be the group of 6. I've always felt that you get more than 7 people on a committee, it doesn't work. It simply doesn't work. It's too many to keep control of, and all you end up is a 2-hour meeting with everybody giving their opinion and no result. And so I think that 6 people would do it. But the auspices for this ought to rest with the city council. If you want to proceed with it, I think that's great. It seems like when you have a meeting of your budget committee, it's a combination of the city councilors and the budget committee, and it works fine. There's a lot of good input from the few meetings I've been at from the general public. They're living it. I did go onto the websites, and I did look at what the different cities have. One of them have terrific forms. I like that idea of forms. If somebody has a problem with signs or speeding at a certain point or whatever, fill out the form and turn it in. And turn it into that committee of 6. Let them review it and see whether it's a valid complaint. If it's not, toss it out. Tell the person why you're doing that. So that would be my recommendation. I think that we've done our job. We've come up with the results. We've done what we are asked. And I think at this point we can give our input as to what we feel should happen from here on, but then we step away.
Why 3 city
And again, you
councilors?
said 3 council and 3 citizens?
Yes.
Why
Kim?
3 councilors? I just don't
Pardon me?
understand. Why 3 councilors?
Because I like the number 3.
No,
I don't have any, I don't have, because,
I'm
Can't
saying
have
why
more.
city,
I'll
I'm
tell you
saying
why.
why city
I'll
councilors?
tell you why,
with
Megan.
their number?
because if a person, in general, if a person has a problem, they go to a city council.
Oh,
They don't call Bob Silverford, they call Kim Young, they call Sean Garland. They know who the counselors are, because every issue of the Archer, there's another counselor in there writing an article and giving their opinion about something. That's who they go to, or they go to the mayor. I know Keith, and I know he gets a lot of input from people that just write him emails or text him. I don't like this, I don't, but that's why.
And it does appear, to echo what Bob is saying, it does appear that many of these boards have quite a few council members on their committee. Like, it's not just 1 or 2, it's quite a few, 3 or 4.
Kim,
Right.
can you speak to that?
I can't speak for council as a whole, but I'll give you my personal opinion,
Yeah.
just like, Rich was saying about one meeting a month and having another meeting. Well, as counselors, we are liaisons to, I know, I'm on 3 other boards outside as my city council liaison, this, the YMCA, and Washington County Board, and so some of us are going to 2 council meetings, 4 other meetings a month. So I think that could be burdensome, but it's our role. We
You
signed up to
wanted
be
to-
elected.
You
Correct.
ran, you were elected?
Correct. So there's that, but, as far as if that wasn't the solution, I think the police advisory board is the perfect place for this. It's just my personal opinion. When we created the senior advisory board, I had a huge concern of adding another board and commission. In fact, we were considering adding 2 at one time, senior advisory and the youth advisory, because staff has to attend all those meetings. All of our senior staff is assigned already to a meeting a month, police advisory, they all attend, and that puts additional staff time. They all have a wonderful Angie taking minutes. My concern was our staff is already stretched. We are understaffed at the city hall. So that was my concern, that was creating an entire new board. But I think any which way you do it could work out though, so.
If I heard the chief correctly, what our task is to come up with a recommendation and present it to council and let council chew on that.
Correct.
So,
And so let me just build on that. So you're going to get, this is very rough generalization, 1 or 3 responses to council when you present your recommendation. Possibility number 1 is, you guys are brilliant, we love it, let's do it. Possibility number 2 is, no, this doesn't work for us. We need you to go back, consider these things,
These parameters.
tweak this is not at all what we had in mind, or we just don't like it. Or number 3 is, we like that, that's good, we're gonna take it under advisement, and we're going to tweak it around and say, staff, we wanna do this and change it, right? So those are kind of the, again, real generalizations, but you're exactly right, you're making a recommendation to council, so.
is it possible that we could give council several recommendations? There's this possibility? There's this-
You could, but I would
Maybe
not
not
advise it.
advisable, yeah.
I would not advise it.
Okay.
I'm kind of liking the, 3 citizens, 3 staff liaisons from different departments.
Stop, please, don't count staff. We don't count.
3 counselors and 3
Okay.
citizens is what he suggested.
We're gonna give you all the staff you
You're
need,
gonna get it.
but they can't, they're not part of your consideration.
I'm just building it in my head.
I would,
Okay.
I
Like
would
a
also,
citizen advisory of 3 though, because there'd be other positions present.
I would advise that you don't, based on what she just said about the counselors, I would suggest that you only have an expectation of 1 counselor being involved, and then the rest be all citizens that
Yeah.
that buy into this. I would like to recommend that it be a separate, and I don't know what the process is for a commission or a board,
Or a
what.
subcommittee of. the
Or a
police
subcommittee.
advisory.
If it's a subcommittee of this, that's fine.
So let me give you input on that.
Okay.
So, and this is just factual. So we just went over the new code, right? So to create another board or commission would require amending that brand new code
Okay.
to establish a new one. And I can tell you, as Councilor Young just mentioned, they were considering 2 new boards and commissions.
Right.
Senior advisory, youth advisory, and there was lots of reasons that went into the decision, but one of them was capacity and do we really want to have 2 new boards? So they went with 1 because they really valued, obviously, the seniors and the senior center. Excuse me. So I can just tell you that my input is I'm not sure that there's going to be capacity for another formal appointed board and commission.
So I have a question to ask to that. Looking at all the other boards, do other boards have subcommittees that report to them? how does that work?
And how does public meeting law and all that kind of stuff
So,
work?
so I don't think so, unless they're one-off to deal with certain things. The best example would be planning commission. Planning commission they won't call them subcommittees, but they will often dive into and have open houses, and so they'll kind of, it has a similar feel, and then, because not every planning commissioner will be there, there'll be staff folks and a lot of citizens that get input, and then that will be reported back to planning commission, so that's the closest example that I'm aware of. The next closest example is the charter review subcommittee. Okay, so it's a subcommittee of council, and it's an ad hoc committee, and it has one representative from every board and commission, several citizen members, and does it have a counselor, which?
Liaison.
The council liaison to it, right? So that would be the next best example of what those could look like.
Council currently has a subcommittee, and it's a PTO committee. There's 3 councilors serving on it as well.
And we've had work groups. One that did police academy
Right.
is the one that comes to mind, and I think we had another one where we had 3 people that worked with you, chief, or somebody to basically brainstorm and work some stuff out and bring it back.
So they say that's a little different
Those are
if you didn't
short-term.
create a subcommittee. If you create an official subcommittee, it would, public meeting laws would apply.
Oh, that's the other thing, thank you. I was sitting here thinking there was something else I was gonna respond to. Yes, public meeting law always applies. So anytime you have, a group that gets together formally, like any 2 of you could get together and say, hey, let's go out and get coffee, public meeting law is gonna apply. But when as a body, you get together to conduct city business, public meeting always applies unless it's in some kind of legally exempted executive session, which only occurs for council. I'm not aware of any other board or commission that's ever had or could have an executive session that I know of. But, so yeah, public meetings, records, all apply. The work of the committee is a public record, all of that.
So I'm just thinking through the logistics of having a subcommittee that reported to this board. So let's just say we had let's say we wanted to odd number 5 citizens and 1 counselor that sat on that would attend. And their job was literally just to basically on a monthly basis go through all the input that they got every month through the forms. Because I know that from what it sounds like, that is the most important thing, is that there's some sort of response to these concerns that people have about speeding or running red lights and such and such. Now, they're gonna get input on things that are beyond just responding to those. And then I think they can collate those and then pass them up the line to the police advisory board for us to deal with and come up with a solution to present to city council. But I honestly think that if you're gonna use the model of Newburgh where you have this portal where citizens can start giving their input on certain stoplights, certain corners, certain cars, and that is the place where we're gonna respond to it, that's gonna consume that subcommittee's energy every single month. That's gonna be, they're gonna sit down and they're gonna have a stack, and they're gonna go through it and work through it and then send responses.
Do subcommittees have to go back up through the main board in order to like present recommendations, or can
No,
they?
so again, it depends on how it's set up. And I would say that, if we go through this list again, I took it back to Peterson, advising city council, advisory capacity city council, advisory body to city council. They don't say, okay? I think there's a reason there's a consistency there. And I think that while many of the processing that is not council, does not rise to the level of council, like the committee may determine, okay, this is an enforcement issue, here you go, Petey. This is an education issue, how are we gonna deal with this, right? There is very often going to be things where that group is going to need to make a recommendation, like we think we need to invest in a neighborhood slow down program, right? Which is gonna involve signs and gonna involve door flyers or whoever. So then that needs to go to council, say, council, we think you should adopt this program, and we believe it's gonna cost X number of dollars. Now, you know, the city manager's gonna say, well, we have it, but we don't. So those are the types of things that council is gonna have to say, yeah, we can implement that. And then that becomes part of the budget process. We say, okay, well, we think we better budget for this group $10,000 next year. It was already discussed earlier this year. Is this gonna cost? How much? And I was like, I can't tell you because we haven't built the model yet. So I think in that regard, what I would do is say, there's a reason why these groups are advisory to city council. Now, could you set it up where they go to the board and then, you could, but you just add a new step, right? They come to you and then somebody, then you go, right, I mean, you just add a new step, so.
But you just also said if they have to report to city council, we have to redo the new municipal code.
Well, it depends, does it have to be an
Not if
official board?
not if what I'm saying is if you create an actual board and commission. So your recommendation could be to council, say, council, we're suggesting you create, and we're gonna discuss what that's gonna be called, and it's a subcommittee that you create, and we recommend it has these members, and they do that by resolution, piece of cake, we're done, no addition to the boards and commission. I don't-
Because it goes,
Because
the
it's a-
conduit is through police advisory board.
No.
Or it's just,
Let's
it's,
not add that step.
it's just not a formal board and commission.
It's a subcommittee.
It's a work group or it's
So,
an
okay.
advisory.
Now, I
So
have
they're
to
kind
work
of-
through the logistics with
Yeah.
that, with Josh and Joe, but I don't know that it's gonna, that it would require the same thing as a board and commission.
Okay.
Especially if you called it, especially if it was, yeah, I don't know. We have to work through some of that. What I mean is it's kind of an offshoot of this group, of this board and commission. It could be a subcommittee of the police advisory board that
That
reports
reports to
directly to
council.
council. I think there's creative ways to make it. What I was saying was, I don't think there's an appetite to create a new board and commission that staff has to manage. Although we're
Staff still have to do
we
that.
still have to manage it, but it's not the same.
It's not, is
So
Does
do
the
we-
word committee make it, sound a little less official than commission?
it? Yeah.
Just because I was reading down.
Yeah,
what
you're
people
definitely
call
not gonna
theirs.
wanna use the word commission.
Okay.
Or
Yeah.
board.
Task force, committee, group.
So do we wanna
Traffic
go, do
advisory
we wanna
group.
go now and make we have all this data, we'll make a recommendation now to form a subcommittee, what we've been talking about here. Or we know that speeding, pedestrian safety are key things. Go with recommendations of what to do immediately or in the near future to help those. Because when I see us setting up a subcommittee, whatever we want to call it, we're probably talking about 9 months, a year. It's pretty long down the line. And I know the people, in fact.
To
some of
set
the
it up,
people-
Bob?
Yeah, to get it set up and running and in operation, in operation. These things take
I would
time.
argue you're on the long side, but okay.
Okay,
your
well, let's
point.
say 6 months.
Sure, yeah.
Or, I've already had people say, Bob, in fact, I'm getting gun shy of going around and asking about these surveys, because people are saying, what's happening? We gave you all that data. They're
So-
looking for answers and what we're gonna
Yes.
do, and I'm saying, well, you're looking around and discussing it.
My response to that is to keep in mind that you're creating a program. So you're creating a traffic calming program that's you're establishing something that's gonna live legacy, right? I mean, it's gonna go for a while. Currently, and the whole reason this came up is because the city gets a hodgepodge of different issues that come to them. We want a speed bump here, we want a stop sign here, people are speeding here. Some come to the city engineer, some come to the police department, many go directly to council. When are you gonna do something about the cars in my neighborhood, Councilor Young? And what council and staff and everybody wants is to create a program that's gonna deal with that.
Okay, So it.
So, right, so this, whatever you create is going to have to deal with this into the future. And I think Rich was right. What that means is that you're probably gonna establish process, forms, things that can come into this group where they can be looked at, analyzed, assigned to staff to go gather more data, find out how many cars really are speeding in that neighborhood, things that we already do. But it would have some formality, and because it's set up the way you're gonna set it up, it would have some teeth, frankly. And I would offer that the value of engaging the community in this is that it goes up exponentially above just the patrol captain or the chief saying, hey, we've looked at the data, Mr. Smith, and I'm really sorry, but there isn't a speeding problem in your neighborhood. Wow, you just don't take that seriously, because we have those folks right now that think we're the spawn of the devil because we haven't solved their problem. And there's a lot of things that play into it. Now, if you have a group of citizen members that review everything and say, no, this is closed, the data does not support the complaint, nor does it support the additional allocation of resources. Next. Now you suddenly have this person that's going to be like, well, who am I going to argue with? Well, it's your fellow citizens that said, we're not going to do this. We're not going to spend our money on your frustrations because they're not supported by data. I can't tell you how many times we've put the speed tubes out and sat down with people that said, people are speeding, they're driving like crazy. And we're like, it's a 25 and the average speed is 24.7. There's not a speeding problem. Yeah, on that day at 1 o'clock, somebody went 47 and that was a problem and we're sorry we missed that. But that doesn't mean that you have a speeding issue. You had one goofball that sped through your neighborhood. I mean, that's what we have to deal with. So I think that's the desire and intent, is to create a program that can take that over. For Bob Glotty, he came in. Remember, his issue is people come to and saying, I want this, and I want this road change, and I want this sign here, and he's like, we don't really have a policy. How are we going to do these? How are we going to respond to people? Well, here you go. That comes in, somebody says, we need speed humps in our neighborhood. And this group reviews it, gathers data, does it, and maybe they just say, maybe that group through city council decides, because you're going to have to establish the menu of options, right? We talked about that several meetings ago when Dr. Takalou was here. And maybe the group says, you know, the city, based on input we've got and what the city council desires right now, those are not on the menu. Okay? So, and that request comes in, well then immediately denied. We don't do those in Sherwood, I'm sorry. If you want to look at other options, great, but we're not doing those.
I understand what we're looking for now, and I think it's going to be more like a year.
Well, I guess I'm gonna go back to this body. And while we've dealt with marijuana and stuff, but every time we've gone out and asked for input from the public, traffic is way on top. And for us to say, well, here's a process, somebody else go deal with it, I'm starting to have a real problem with that. And if it becomes a burden to us, then yeah, then we go to council and say, you know, we need to set something else up, because we're spending 85% of our time advising you just on this. And if that's what you want, then okay. But I'm starting to feel like we're passing the buck if we don't try and handle this and work out the bugs, come up with the forms, work through the process, and give it a go for a while. There's 5 of us that have been around here for 4.5+ years, and we have some pretty good experience. And again, I just think that we ought to take the leadership and put the program together and operate it so that we can then recommend if there needs to be a subcommittee or a total new board and commission that the council needs to have, if it's that much. But from what I'm hearing from some of your research, quarterly dealing with this, with our agendas, I mean, we have quite a few light agendas, let's be honest.
I'm not so sure they deal with it quarterly. I think they deal with it in between and then they formally address. Just my
Okay,
opinion.
all right.
Like, I think they have it quarterly so that they can do a lot of the legwork in between their quarterly meetings.
So how does that work, chief?
So let me-
Legwork.
Let me again provide input. So new language, right, which is not new actually, but in the new code. Police advisory board is hereby established for the purpose of advising the city council and city administration on police department policies, planning, and management. Skip down to duties and responsibilities. The board shall assist the police department in establishing priorities for the delivery of police services, including types, levels, and quality of police services. Department strategic plan and goals, recommended strategies for the future, and public policy on policing. Educate the community about police work, purpose of law enforcement, be a component of the Sherwood community with the goal of promoting public safety. Working relationships between residents, community, faith community, youth population. Invite and encourage public input regarding the above matters. And advise the chief of police, make recommendations to city council when appropriate. So, I would say based on that, what you're suggesting is outside of the scope of what this board is established to do. And I would also just again reiterate that there's no appetite to create, I do not believe, to create, correct me if I'm wrong, another board and commission. So here's what I would like to do. I was gonna stop at 8 o'clock and do this. I've given you an extra 15 minutes. I wanna run through and just ask a couple of just very leading questions to get some results that we can report and on progress, because Joe is preparing the progress report that he's gonna give the council on the goals and strategies and the work that they asked us to do. This is a big part. This is one of the big ones out of public safety. So I want to have some progress for him. We don't have to finish this work tonight, but, so,
Can I say one thing?
Yes,
first?
please.
Because as a counselor, during our goal setting, I was under the impression, and I thought council was, that besides the traffic calming, whatever program came to us was already going to have some suggestions for us based on the research that you have done. Like, based on the research we've done since the program was established, we think we need 2 speed bumps and 3 stop signs and that. But it sounds like we're just gonna create whatever the program is and then pass anyways, that along to them.
yeah, because those would be all very specifically related to issues within the community,
Yeah.
which they haven't addressed. They've just been gathering the input.
Which I think it would be, yeah, that would be a sort of let's then now deep dive into all the issues.
Yeah.
Which could do, but it's probably like, do we do
So
those at the same time?
I'm gonna hopefully I made lots of notes, I'm gonna grab what you're talking about, so these aren't my opinions, I'm gonna kind of chew and regurgitate what you said, and come back to this, or try to wrap it up. And before I do that, let me just share a concern that you're right, there's lots of light agendas here. But we've also had challenges, present company excluded, of getting everybody engaged. I think my concern with saying, okay, this group is gonna do it, is what that would really mean is that 2 or 3 people of this group are gonna do it.
Yeah, like.
And again, not to say, but I mean, that's just life's reality, so
80-20.
that's just my concern, right? So, to start with, what do you think we should call this group? Throw something out.
Traffic safety advisory committee.
No committee.
Public
No,
safety,
Committee's okay.
Committee's okay.
Committee over
Committee's okay.
commission.
public safety committee, or subcommittee, whatever you want to call it. But public safety, I think, should be in the title.
Or is it
Public
traffic?
safety.
Public safety
advisory
sometimes
group.
means police though, doesn't it, more than traffic safety?
Well, no, public safety means police and fire and emergency services. This is a traffic calming program, so Do you want it to be specific to the task that the group is gonna be doing?
I think the word traffic needs to be in it.
I mean, you saw some of the other ones, they're,
I saw advisory.
Some of them call them Traffic and Safety Commission. Traffic
What about
Safety
traffic-
Advisory Commission.
traffic safety advisory group or committee.
That works for me.
Mhm.
It says what it is, and it says what
Traffic
it's not.
Safety Advisory Committee or group?
I'd just say Traffic Safety Committee.
We have our own TSA.
If we're gonna be advising, we're not a board, which this is.
Mhm.
The task is to advise council.
You can have that in your goals or whatever.
Yeah,
That's true, so
So-
traffic safety committee,
yeah.
Mhm.
I like that.
Quite a few of them actually refer to Traffic Safety Committee.
Let's just do that.
Bob, that's much more narrower than what you suggested. Are you comfortable with that?
Had something else in my head. Tell me again, please.
Traffic safety committee?
Sounds good to me.
All right, good. See, so this is what we need to do. We'll get some deliverables here. Let's talk about the membership. Clearly, everybody's got to have community people on it. There was some desire to have a council liaison. Is that what everybody wants? Or no? You've heard from Councilor Young about capacity. That's always going to be an issue, so.
We definitely think it's easier for one than three.
Well, it depends, if they respond, report directly to police advisory board, then there probably doesn't need to be a counselor. If they're gonna be independent and we're gonna get data as things come in, but no necessarily report to us, then I think they need to have a counselor.
My sort of thought is that just that sometimes I feel like, Kim, because of your knowledge of the city and the rules of the city, that sometimes if the committee is talking about some issue, and you can often remind sort of us, general public people, of what some of the city rules and code, and so I do like that. I like what you bring in that way, that otherwise sometimes maybe we might go round and round if we're not really aware of some of the.
Yeah, and you also have staff there.
Let me rephrase the question. How many members do you think this traffic safety committee should have?
Other than staff and.
How many,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
how many members? Yeah.
6.
I like six.
Other? 6?
I like odd, but
Yeah.
You like an odd number, make it 7. No, I think 6 would be good.
I think the desire for odd is so that there's never a tie vote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know that there's gonna be this huge volume of votes, so I will just tell you that. It's gonna be review, recommend, suggest, assign, close, and we need to go talk about this one more. I don't see them taking a bunch of votes where there's gonna be, should we put speed bumps up, you know what I mean? So,
5 to 6.
6.
Yep.
6 is fine with me.
okay, 6. How many citizen members? Citizens at large? Folks that you talked to that said they'd be willing, how many of the 6 do you want to be citizens?
As opposed to.
As opposed to, thank you, 1 from PAB, and don't count council, don't count staff, 2 from PAB, that's what I'm getting at. Clearly, there's been some mixed talk about, should PAB be involved?
4 and 2.
I'll second that. If you don't, I like 3 and 3, but if it's, you want less counselors, make it 4 and 2.
I'd like to see a teenager be involved somehow.
Don't muddy the waters now with that.
There are a couple of them on there that do have a
Let's-
member.
Perhaps we recommend that as a liaison, as
Yeah.
opposed to a member, and because I can tell you it's difficult, like, we did great for a while, but then
They go off.
there just
I mean,
nothing,
you
so.
can put in there 5 citizens in hopes of 1 teenager, but don't make it a requirement, 'cause you may never get it.
Right.
So if we do 4 citizens and 2 reps from PAB, I'll just throw this out based on the comments. And then obviously, I'm not counting staff, you're gonna have whatever staff. We'll talk to council about a liaison, and then we will have a spot as a liaison from the youth That way it can change, it can be somebody different, doesn't matter, but there's somebody there to say, well, here's what I think about this.
Can
How's
we
that?
have like a rotating council person? Like, does it have to be, this is me not knowing city council rules.
We hold our position for a year.
So you can't like say, well, there's 10 council people, so they can each attend one meeting.
Oh, we could.
Can I add something to
I
that?
think it comes,
I think if it's 4 and 2 from PAB, I would say that the chair of this group be a citizen and not a member of PAB.
I agree with that.
What?
Yeah.
So the new
Yeah.
group, the traffic safety committee, the chair would be one of the citizen members
Yeah.
and not
Yes.
one of the PD.
I agree.
I agree, otherwise it doesn't seem as though the citizens have the voice, and I think the
Right.
intent is for the
That's what
citizens.
we do on the budget, committee, no counselors.
Yeah.
So the PAB is just a liaison back to this board?
Well, you'd be a vote, you'd be
It'd be a working party.
Yeah, but.
Okay, next question. Let's dive into a little bit of authority. It sounds like there was some consensus that they need to be advisory to city council. Is that what everybody's thinking?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
I would
now let me
definitely-
add to that.
I'm so confused.
Since you have, what are you confused about?
Well, if they're, sorry, if they're
No, I
going.
just, I think it means, so if they find an issue that they'd like to address, can they actually contact and take it to council? Or do they have to, versus having to maybe run it back up through us? Which, if you think about maybe the number and the
It's back to
volumes of
charter.
issues that they might have,
We'd become the traffic freaking board.
Right.
yeah, so for
The
that reason,
majority
I
of what
think
they're
it
gonna
would be
deal with
nice if
isn't
they
gonna
could-
need to go to council. Council is going to, if their authority comes through council and they report to council, which would be my recommendation. I think that's what council envisions. Is that fair?
I didn't know that we envisioned creating a whole nother board, but if that was the case, I would think so, because
Well,
otherwise.
but not a full board
Well, I mean,
commission, but I mean,
right.
yeah.
But I think you're gonna get bogged down if they make their recommendation and they gotta wait 4 weeks to bring it to you, and then they gotta wait 4 weeks
Now-
to get it to
Oh, yeah,
council.
I
Now, here's the deal, here's how we capture that part about, like Chris said, well, we're the ones and we wanna hear, so you just have a spot on your monthly agenda where the chair comes and says, hey, PAB, here's what we've been working on.
Or your two liaisons.
Or your two liaisons report out, thank you, report out on a monthly basis. Hey, your TSC did 125 complaints or whatever, inputs last month. It's been busy or whatever. Is that, so?
Yeah, because there may be things that come in that need action that will require council to say, yeah, spend the money, that we can't wait for it to come through here. There needs to be that.
Well, and let me just make sure I'm clear that council doesn't give permission for budget, for spending money, right? Council is a part of the budget process.
Oh, so
establishes
it's
the budget.
it's Joe and what's.
So it could be that they go to Joe and say, okay, Joe, we are recommending, city manager,
Okay.
that these signs go up here. Where it would come to council is if the group either went to Joe or Joe was invited or whatever, or staff said, okay, what you're considering and suggesting is a brand new program that's not budgeted.
Okay.
Now you go to council, say, council, we would say that we value this and it should be, we've talked to city manager, plug the money in the budget, we think this should be part of the budget moving forward to allocate, $10,000 to support this traffic safety program, whatever it is, moving forward. So that's the
Okay.
nuance.
I-
And then once it's in the budget, then you'd say, okay, now Joe, we need to expend the funds.
Right, okay.
And you want two PAB because it's our baby. We
Well,
need to take ownership.
I think, I still believe that we have been involved with these issues for 4.5 years. We've been asked to pull this concept together, that we need to at least provide some continuity to what our vision was and help if things need to be tweaked. I think that's important because council came to us with this task. if it evolves that we just need a liaison of one in the future, then that's cool. But I think having two is important. That's my opinion.
I'm also writing down staff liaisons include PD, engineering, DVFNRs, council, and youth. Council may choose to address that out, you know what I mean? Okay, let me just make sure I've got. So tasks and duties, I think, is the only other issue I had from the notes, and I'm not sure that that's a challenging thing to ask, or to answer. Everything, it would seem like from all the work you've done and what we've discussed tonight, the tasks and duties of this group would be to process traffic safety complaints and issues. And as a part of that, we'll establish some forms. We'll work with y'all and staff to create some forms and get those approved, get them posted on the website that people can use to provide the inputs that this traffic safety committee will review. And frankly, what I like what you all have put together, because this is what I had hoped for and envisioned. Because all the stuff that trickles into us piecemeal, we can now just say, oh, hey, I'm sorry that's happening. Listen, I need you to go to the city website, and you're gonna find the link to this form, fill that out, it'll go to our traffic safety committee, they'll review it, and it'll go from there. And most of the forms that are gonna come in, as I said, you're gonna look at it and say, okay, blah, blah, blah. Is everybody, I'm just pretending I'm the chair. So, okay, we've got this one on such and such. I'm gonna use yours as an example. Chair's gonna say, okay, we've got this complaint that the vegetation is blocking the vision coming out of Cherry Orchard Place, and it's a safety issue, and do we give this to the PD, or you know what I mean? And then you say, okay, no, I think this needs to go to engineering to follow up with the property owner who happens to be ODOT, so that we can say, hey, we've got a complaint, can you guys cut your reminder back, whatever. Or it goes to code compliance who says, yeah, I think the vision is fine. But there could be those where they say, okay, this sounds like an enforcement issue, does everybody agree? Yeah, that's an enforcement issue, here you go, chief or whoever the liaison is. And then we take that, and that's a form we can then use to assign focus our efforts on, and then we can report back and say, man, we just didn't find anybody speeding, or, yeah, gosh, we wrote 32 tickets in a week. That was a huge problem. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe we need more data, right? I'm just running through this. So this, what you guys have put together is.
Process question. So we fill out a form, it gets sent off into the ether, goes to the traffic safety committee, they do their magic. We need to have some sort of apparatus to communicate back with that person that sent the form in.
Oh, yeah, that'll be part of the
Okay.
process we'll have to put
Right.
together.
It could be really a month before that person gets back.
That's fine, but as
Yeah.
long as that they're not just left out there. If we set something
I
like this
agree.
up, we have to follow through with it.
I agree.
Could almost have an automatic response.
Is
Thank you
it
for your
possible
inquiry.
before we, are you taking this to council like right away?
No, we've got to get that scheduled.
Is it possible to, because it sounds to me like you are very favorable towards the Newburgh forms and their process.
Well, I haven't looked at them yet. I just like the idea of having,
Yeah,
you stop here, I need this one, this
Yeah.
is my beef.
No, they're
and I'm
pretty
sending
good, their
it.
forms
and
are good.
I like that too. 'Cause
Really good.
And rather than reinventing the wheel, I wonder if maybe between now and when we get that appointment with councils, we can, as
Yes.
police advisory board, somebody can actually go research that and really find out, is this really?
That'll be our job. We'll
Okay.
go grab those forms, we'll
Okay.
rip off the Newburgh stuff and paste the Sherwood stuff on,
Okay,
and we'll
Good.
make them our own. That happens all the time.
just don't reinvent the wheel.
It
is
happens
what
in
I'm saying.
churches too, I'm sure. Happens all the
Every
time.
single sermon is original.
No, not sermons,
Sermons.
not sermons, I'm talking about
Politics.
process and forms. and all that
Everything is
stuff.
original.
Yeah.
Quakers do it a very specific way.
They're very silent about it.
Okay, so the final piece of this, I think I have everything that plenty to report back to Joe. Conceptually, the last piece of this is, thank you, is to find out who, not who wants to be on the traffic safety committee, but who would like to work on the proposal. And you want to default it to your chair and vice chair, because you guys start building the report and putting the proposal together, which it's gonna be time with us, because we're gonna wanna do it really nice, and we'll help you with PowerPoints and all that stuff, but, I think that's the next piece, so you all tell me.
Put me down.
What's that?
Put me down.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, so
I mean,
then,
I'll work alongside of you.
hearing none,
If it's a lot by
we will
email.
get to work with your chair, staff and your chair, and then my hope. You don't have anything to hit me with, do you? My hope is that we can
It's
maybe
got a
have,
hydro flask, I'd watch
Yeah.
out.
we can have, maybe have something to show as a draft, next month.
Sounds good.
When
Are we
is our
meeting
normal
second?
meeting next month?
August 27th, we're having it a little bit later.
Oh, that's right, we
We have an
adjusted
extra
it.
week.
Yes, we have an extra week, never mind Citizens Academy.
Now, what is the date?
We
Is it
know a
August
couple though
22nd?
who can't be there, so we
Yeah.
did wanna talk about that.
There's 2 members there.
What is the date of the next meeting?
22nd.
22nd.
Okay, that's all I have then, so we'll take it from here, and we'll coordinate with
Okay.
Chair.
So if we
Thanks,
can't be
Chief.
here, is there something we can do to help?
Well, I think if we're gonna be missing 2, we're at 7 right now, so we need 4 for quorum.
You can send it out for,
Yeah, we can
Could we just have
send
like
it
an
out.
e-meeting? I mean, as far as
I
like.
mean, there's 7 of you, if there's only 2 not gonna be here next month, you still have a quorum.
Yeah.
We can still do business, we can send it out so everybody gets to see it. It's just gonna be, it doesn't have to be approved. It's just a draft to look at next week, fine tune. We're gonna schedule a work session, I think is what Joe wants to do with council. So that can be, maybe, I mean, to get on the schedule is gonna be September, October anyway, so. Don't say it, Bob.
It's like, it's looking more
Don't
like a
you
year.
stop.
It's looking more like a year, Bob.
But we're gonna use Newburgh's forms, so it's gonna save us
Yeah.
2 months. Yeah.
Counselor news.
all right. Well, if you all hadn't seen the latest city flash alert that came out, the city was awarded $2 million by the state to help with our potential pedestrian bridge. So in this year's budget, we budgeted enough money to do a feasibility study, and this will help with that as well, which will give us, some ideas, what can we even do? Will that be over, will that be under, will that be, where does it need to start by the Y to get enough ramp, that kind of thing, so you're not climbing stairs. And so, we'll know much more after the feasibility study as to what the cost of that would even look like, and the options and A, B, C, and D. The other thing I was gonna talk about, because Chief hasn't talked about it yet, but not that we've been granted it yet, but the police department applied for a grant for school violence prevention program, almost $105,000 in grant funding to complete 3D mapping and labeling of each of the 7 public schools in the Sherwood School District. And 6 Sherwood police officers to a national training to prevent student violence against others and self. The city, if we got the grant, the city would match about $35,000 to put into that. I was just gonna read a little
What's
synopsis.
the grant from?
Cops, it's a cops grant.
Cops grant. 3D mapping is critical to a timely, effective response to an emergency. When responding to an emergency at an area school, Sherwood PD would currently have a crude floor plan to work with at best. This service would provide 4K 360 photography of spaces with every school building, easily accessible by first responders on any internet-connected device. Label floor plans with tagged items within the space, such as locked doors, emergency exits, flammable materials, and more, will reduce vertical times to those in distress. And then the grant funding again would help pay for the 6 officers to go to training. So if we're successful, we did just get a letter of endorsement that was sent to the Department of Justice, signed by Senator Merkley, Senator Wyden, and Representative Bonucci. So they backed that for us. So when should we hear about that? Do we know?
I think in September.
Nice.
Is that gonna include the new high school?
Yes, we'll start with the new high school.
Okay, and we're talking about active shooter type situations.
Well,
Or other
anything you would need to
situations,
see in
but
the
certainly
building.
that's the worst scenario, yeah.
That'd be pretty cool. And then, I know we talked a while back about, the council adopted new truck routes within the city, and the ones that we couldn't get identified were Elwood and Edie. We just got another letter from, Chair Harrington of Washington County, and they still, have told us no. They said, given that the county staff have not identified structural or geometric issues on either Elwood Road or Edie Road, posting these county roads as no-through trucks is not warranted at this time. So we just got a big no. We've tried, I think we're done arguing that one for a while, so. No, we cannot limit that. Did you all see the flags in downtown on 4th of July? That was pretty cool, huh? That was great effort by our public works to get those up. And then just National Night Out, just so you know, we do have a council meeting that night too, so, some councilors might get there about 5, but skedaddle because of the work session at 6, so. Unfortunate, but we only have one meeting a month in the summer, so the timing was bad on that one for us. That's it. Any questions for me?
No, I have a comment. No, but it raised a comment. So, in this last week, I get a flash alert from my son's university. And we got a flash alert that said that there was a situation on campus, and everybody was supposed to shelter in place. And I thought it was interesting because I was watching this information unfold in social media. Everybody was wanting to know what's going on, where is the issue, where's everybody hiding, and there's this big debate online about stop giving information about where you're sheltered, because if someone's going to try to come get you, you've just told them exactly where you are. There were teachers who were dealing with 4-H group was visiting the campus. They had no idea where to put them. There were students who didn't know where to go. And I thought it was very eye-opening because I looked at my son and said, would you have any concept of what to do if you weren't in your dorm room at the time? And he didn't. He had no idea where the threat could be coming from. He had no idea of which rooms could be locked, of which rooms to shelter in where he would be safe. And I thought that would be something that, you know, if, I don't know what kind of conversations are going on in the schools around here as far as that sort of stuff, but I thought it was interesting that he at 18 years old and having been at that school for an entire year had never had a conversation about exactly what do we do if something like this happens. And it's getting to be more and more common. So if we're not already having those conversations at school, I would like to see us.
Well, I know our
consider it.
schools do their lockout, lock-in drills,
Mhm.
so the students definitely have that information, as far as how to, where to go, or, I don't know, I've never had part of that.
Lori, before joining Police Advisory Board, and I don't remember his name, but I can eventually find it if you want it. After the Parkland shooting, I started making calls to figure out that before Parker went into kindergarten. And I had a lovely conversation, probably an hour and a half, with he's an employee of the district. And his role in his department, it's him and another person under him, but they've been tasked with making the lock-in, lock, all of that process, working with the bond and figure out what that safety is. And he said there's a lot more that we're doing, he just couldn't legally tell me. But he's, you know, one of the things they were even talking about was, that problem and how there's actually a committee in the district that works on, that is working on that.
But is your son away at college?
Yeah, it's away at college.
But it brought up the
just-
point for the district that
Yeah, it brought back the idea that it's one thing to talk about it when it's not something that you're actively involved in, but when it actually occurs, you know, and you get into that, and I'm sure Chief, you could speak to this a little more, but, when you get into that fight or flight mechanism, are you actually stopping and thinking about, well, I had a class on this 6 months ago, what did they teach me? Where do I go? If you're not living it day after day like a police officer would be, sort of thing, I don't know that he would have known what to do. And I strongly suspect that he would have been more like a deer in the headlights. If he had been out in the middle of campus and something was going on, I can envision him freezing and saying, where do I go? What do I do? How does this work?
That's a challenge. That's my best response. There is a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes, and there is communication that takes place with students. We're actively involved in the school district on all that, but there's also an ever-present challenge of finding the appropriate balance. Because every sixth grader is not the same, at the same maturity level, right?
Right.
Every sophomore is not at the same maturity level. We could share information with one sophomore that would be like, okay, that's good to know, I'll go that way. The sophomore sitting next to them would be panic stricken, and now we've just created this, the next day, they're gonna call in and say, what did you tell my kid, he didn't wanna come to school today?
Right, and this might be a conversation to have other than here, but I thought it was very eye-opening to see the conversations that even the teachers, who I would assume had some training, just totally blow by that training seemingly and say, what am I supposed to do? How come you're not giving me any information? I need to be able to make decisions for the people that are now in my care,
Yeah.
where if
That's
you're being
unfortunate,
told.
because that training has been taking place for decades.
Yeah, but it seemed to me, okay, so you're in it,
That's
where does
happening
that training go?
Conversations happening on social media, that's interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Good point. Points.
Staff reports?
Yeah, just a couple things really quick. Coffee with the Cop, July 24th, 4 to 7. So we've gotten lots of feedback. I can't go in the morning, I'm going to work. So finally, we're gonna have an evening session, symposium, 4 to 7. And then secondly, I need to confirm the 4 names. I have some written down, but I had some questions on mine that are attending the Citizens Police Academy, this first go-around from this board. So who believes they are going? Okay, there's 3. And that's why I say this, because we're in need 4.
I was probably the 4th, and I raised my hand, but I'm sure that you need to be for all 3 sessions, right?
Yes,
If I can't,
that's what we ask.
if
And
I
what were
can't,
the
I can't
dates
make the
again?
last one, so take it
August
off.
15, 16,
Yeah,
17.
I'm out of town. And I was worried about work anyway, so.
Okay? So I've got Rich, Lori, and Ralph. And 3 is fine, there'll be other opportunities.
You interested? You weren't here. Oh.
It's
And-
5 to 9, 5 to 9, 8 to 3.
And it does look like I was gonna travel, or I am gonna travel for work, which is
Okay,
what my.
very good.
Um,
Mr. Chair, that's all I have.
All right. No citizen comment, so if there's nothing else. We're adjourned.